everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about what Mormon dating looks like from a convert's perspective. I am an ex-Mormon. I decided not to be a member of the church anymore at I want to say probably about the middle point of 2023. I joined the church when I was 24 years old. So, needless to say, I already had a bunch of experience in the dating world. I partied all the time, I had a social life, I experienced a lot of different stuff. So, when I first became a member of the church, it was very, very different than what I had already experienced. So, first of all, Mormons are taught from a very, very young age about temple marriage and how important it is to get married in the temple and to have children and this happy family life. So it's engraved in their head from the time that they're little that marriage is the ultimate goal in life. Plus, young adults, like I want to say the younger teens, before you turn 18, probably like 15, maybe 14, even up to 18, they are encouraged to go to social gatherings, and the church holds a lot of social gatherings for all the age groups pretty much. And they are encouraged to go to these social gatherings so that way they can mingle, not date, not go on dates or anything at that age, but mingle with the other young adults, male and female, so they get a little experience. And then when they turn dating age, it kicks into high gear and they're way more serious about it. So I became a member, like I said, when I was 24. So I got immersed straight into the young single adults dating. So I didn't experience the young social gatherings and everything. I saw it because I was a Sunday school teacher. So I was exposed to the younger crowd and knew about what they did. They would talk about it. We would talk about it. And they, dance. There was music, games, very innocent stuff. Just a chance for them to mingle with each other. But I was in the young single adults, so it was pretty serious. Young women are and young men are pretty much going into dating thinking, okay, I'm looking for my future wife, I'm looking for my future husband. So every time they start dating somebody, it was weird because all of the young women that I was around, they would talk about somebody that they met at, a social gathering where all the wards came together and the young single adults did stuff together, and how so early on dating this person, they would be talking about marriage and what married life would be with them. And I thought it was like, what? It was weird to me. I tried the dating, but it was weird because the in the ward where I was from, in the state where I live in Colorado. So it was very kind of by the book. The male should have the priesthood, the woman should be endowed, they should be able to go to the temple on dates together. And it was very much focused on, okay, this could be my potential partner, without getting to know each other more, without getting to be around each other that much, experiencing things together. So it's definitely kind of a rushed thing. A lot of times, the people that I was around, they wouldn't date for very long before they decided they were getting married. And the weddings would be put together really quick. Like, I didn't know anybody who had planned their marriage, like a year out or anything after they got engaged. They got engaged, and it was like a few months later, they were getting married, which was kind of crazy. But they were pushed to do it so quickly because they didn't want to fall into temptation. Like, the leaders of the church, the apostles and even the prophet, encouraged young people to marry quickly so that way they didn't fall into temptation. So they didn't have sex, pretty much. So they didn't do anything physical and become impure. So rush, 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 rush. Hurry up and get married so that way you can have sex with your wife. I mean, they didn't say that, but in so many words, it was like, yeah, don't have sex before you get married. So hurry up and get married so that way you can have sex. Which is, I mean, I guess back in the old days, all the movies that my mom watches, like old English movies, that's how that was, the girl met the boy and they got engaged very quickly and they loved each other very quickly. That's kind of how it felt. Like, you meet each other, you start dating, and if you guys have that sexual attraction, oh, you guys better get married. You're meant to be married. Boom, you're married. And then having kids. Very quick. Very, I want to say, even rushed. I did not do well with the Mormon dating at all because I had already had a bunch of experience, and to me, it was just ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I didn't feel right dating guys because they would be thinking about me as their potential wife, and to me, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So I dated, but I tried not to date too seriously. There was probably one person that I was like, oh my goodness, because I was a brand new member of the church, and he was a brand new return missionary. I met him like the day he was giving his return speech for young single adults family home evening, and he was tall, handsome, had gone to a French speaking mission, so he was speaking French, and so I was like, oh my goodness. Looking back now, I'm like, I was so silly. But, jumping into it thinking, oh my gosh, there's going to be so many good, God fearing men. They're going to be nice. They're going to be loving. They're going to lead. They're going to treat me well. So I was all, ooh. And dating him was interesting. I got to meet his family and all of that stuff. But being a convert, he was a member of the church since he was a baby. He was born into it. So being a convert, his parents were kind of like, you have a background, and we don't want you to lead our son astray into temptation or anything. It was a weird feeling. So him and I, we connected, and it easily could have led to something else, but I didn't feel right. He was getting ready to go off to college, and I was like, why would you want to date somebody long distance? That doesn't make sense to me. You're about to be in college around a bunch of people, all these experiences you can have. So go on, go do your thing. And he got married just like maybe 6 months after he started going to BYU, Idaho. So I was like, see, I knew I was not the one for him because I was not about to be rushing into it and all of that. As much as I liked him, I was not going to be marrying him because that's crazy to marry so quickly. But yeah, he was married within like 6 months. So they're definitely encouraged to hurry up and tie the knot so that way you can be physical. Going back to, the girls, if the guy they were dating had the priesthood, if he had served a mission, if he was going to the temple and they were going on dates like that, that's really all they cared about and all they looked at. They weren't really interested to know what his character was, I guess, because if he had the priesthood, then he was going to be like every other priesthood holder. He was going to be devoted to his family. He's going to be devoted to the church. He's going to check all the boxes. So they didn't really try to learn their partner's character, things that they liked, disliked. It was all very focused on we need to come together, read our scriptures together, worship together. The closer we get together, then the closer we get to God. The way they explained it, marriage, was that it was a triangle. The wife and the husband were at each corner of the triangle, and then God was at the top of the triangle. So the closer that each individual got to God, at the same time, the closer they would get to each other. So that was the whole thing, was focus on the church, focus on the gospel, focus on spreading the gospel. And the more you do that, the closer you and your husband will get together. So not really getting to know each other, just focusing on what their purpose was. So they would be dating these guys, assuming that it was going to lead to marriage because he checks all of these boxes. And then when it wouldn't work out, these girls would be devastated. I mean, devastated. Now, I didn't really hang out with many of, the guys. So I'm not really sure how the guys felt about, the dating and whatnot. But I know on the girls' side, like, some of these ladies would be pretty broken, pretty hurt. Like, oh my goodness, I thought he was the one. I saw our whole future. And it was kind of sad to witness because it was heartbreak. But at the same time, the relationships weren't very deep, but still the emotions were real. But I felt bad for a lot of the young ladies. If it didn't work out, they were pretty down about it. But they would be on to the next one, If that one didn't work out, there's another priesthood holder that will come along that you can date. Pretty much. So that's what it was like here in Colorado when I was in the Mormon dating scene for the young single adults. I did move to Provo, Utah about a year after my membership, or after I got baptized. And while, yes, there was the same kind of dating, because I feel like in Colorado it was more by the book, more strict. Like, there weren't really people that were dating and then having sex, Like, that was a no-no. You did not have sex. And people would find out. People knew about it. Like, and of course, if you did, you would have to go confess to your bishop. I mean, you wouldn't have to, but you're pretty much told you go confess everything to the bishop because you gotta always be worthy. You gotta always, always be as worthy as you can. Confess everything to the bishop. So they would confess, and then everyone would know because they're not taking sacrament, or somebody said something. So that was not something that happened very often. There were a couple people that when they went on dates, it was like, okay, well, we already know this person's going to do something physical because that's how they are. But that was like one girl that I can think of and one boy that I could think of out of everybody. It was a no-no. Moving to Utah, it was a different story. Don't get me wrong. There was the same traditional, Mormon dating that I had experienced in Colorado. And I was in the young single adults there as well because I was, 25 when I moved there. So I was still involved in that scene. And I was, you know, I can't say that I dated anybody in like the normal dating setting where you go to the gatherings at church or you go to the events that they have, or firesides, what they call, where somebody came and gave like a gospel message and then you know something happened afterwards, like they had a potluck or something, dances. Outside of that, like I got to a point where I was like, this is still not for me. I don't like this. I feel out of place because, again, I had experienced so much more than so many of these people. So I kind of started to venture out a little bit because there was a dark side to the dating scene in Utah. Especially, I lived in Provo, so it was a college town. So there were so many young people that lived in that city. And the way that it's set up is like, it was Provo, and pretty much from Provo all the way up to Salt Lake City, which it was a long way. It took about, I want to say like hour and a half to get to Salt Lake City from Provo, but along the way it was just all developed. So it was all little cities. So it was literally like Provo, Orem, I think it was North American Fork, or American Fork, like, and they all just ran together. Just, you wouldn't even know you were in a different little town or city or whatever it was, unless you were like from there or you lived there and you knew. So there were so many young people. And there were so many well off people as well, especially where I lived. Like that whole strip of the highway where it's all developed is like mountains are on each side. So you could literally look around and it was like you're in a bowl of mountains. And the well off families, they had houses along like the side of the mountain. So I remember one of my friends had talked about, what was it? Tinder. So I was like, huh, okay. So I decided to get on Tinder. There were tons of young single adults on Tinder. But it was a whole nother thing. It was more of like what I experienced in the normal worlds of dating. There was a lot of hookup culture. I mean, these young kids would party, especially the ones whose parents were well off, and a lot of times like their dad or something would have a real high up position in the church, and they would have nice houses. I remember I connected with one young guy, and he tried really really hard. Okay, he took me to a puppy farm. Took me to a puppy farm where we played with puppies and we held them and everything like that. And then we went for a walk, and then he wanted to take me back to his house so he could show me these deer that came up to his back door. He said these deer came up to his back door all the time and he wanted to show me these deer. And I'm like, okay. Now I didn't know him. I didn't know where he lived or anything like that, but we went to his house, and I don't remember what little city he was in. It was maybe 20 minutes away from Provo. And he lived next to, there was a temple on the side of the mountain, and he lived in the neighborhood right there next to the temple. It was a gated neighborhood. Huge house. Huge house. So his parents were very well off, but they were off doing something, traveling and whatnot. That's a lot of these young kids had parents that were just traveling and they were home by themselves all the time. So we got to his house and there were deer that came up to his back door, which was really cool. I was like, oh, okay. I thought maybe he was lying because, you know, he just wanted to go back to his house. But after the deer came up, then he came. He tried to make his move. And I was just like, are you kidding me? What? You're this supposed to be this good Mormon boy, and you're over here trying to get into my pants? Like, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, it gave me a whole new perspective on Mormon dating. I was like, so there are a group of young people that aren't really following the gospel. They're like average young people everywhere that want to party and want to have fun. And it was crazy because so many of them thought that if you have sex but you have with a condom on, it doesn't count. Which also blew my mind because I had a friend who, I knew her in Colorado. Her family moved to Utah before I moved to Utah. So when I moved out there, she only lived like maybe 4 of the little cities away from me. So we would hang out, we would talk and whatnot because we dated one of the same guys in Colorado. So that was always like our little inside joke. But she started dating this one guy and went on, I think it was like maybe their first or second date. They ended up having sex together. And she said that the next Sunday they went to church. I think their date was only a couple days before Sunday, like Friday, maybe even Saturday. And he took the sacrament. And she was surprised he took the sacrament and even asked him, like, we just were together and you're taking the sacrament. You're not supposed to take the sacrament. And he told her, well, we used a condom, so it doesn't count. I was like, what? You literally have people out here talking about if you don't use a condom, then it doesn't count? That's crazy, because I'm sorry, if it goes in, it counts. Duh. So it was a whole whole nother side to it. It was the dark side of Mormon dating, which is kind of funny because the dark side is like normal dating out in the world for young people. I know that's what I was doing. I was partying, I was hooking up, I was doing all that stuff. So it's like they were doing all this bad stuff, but it was normal stuff at the same time. But if their bishops or something found out, oh, you know, some sort of punishment, some sort of disciplinary action would have to be taken. Like, it was a big deal. So it was just very contradicting, very interesting to say the least, because I had lived in Colorado pretty much my whole life, but I was there for like the first year of my membership. And so being in the strict dating world, it was a shock to me to see these young people living it up, living life how normal young kids did. And so it's crazy to think that that's what my perspective was, even though that's something I had experienced. I looked at these young people like, oh my goodness, these people are not worthy, but yet they're still going to temple, they're still taking their sacraments. So judgmental. I felt so judgmental. And I was being judgmental. And though you're not looking at like deep characteristics, you are being very judgmental, because if they're not checking these boxes off, they're not worthy to date. They're not worthy to think of as a husband or wife. So it's very toxic. Let's just say very, very toxic. Teaching young people that it doesn't matter about someone's character. It doesn't matter if you get to know them. Just find somebody and marry them, so that way you guys don't sin and fall into temptation and have sex out of wedlock. Which, so many of the marriages that I saw, progressing after they married, that I was around, yes, they were happy. The husbands and wives, the people were very, I guess, loving of each other and everything. They were doing what they were supposed to do. But at the same time, it's like you can tell they weren't really enjoying being married. So many of them had no clue what it was to be intimate, had no clue how sex worked. And it's supposed to be something that you express between each other, but so many of them had no idea how to do that, how to tap into that, because the church was so against it. Like, they preached against it so much about being worthy, about being pure, about your body's a temple, treat it right, that it made people just jump in and then kind of be miserable. The guy that I dated, that got married like 6 months after he started going to college there, he ended up messaging me like a couple years later and trying to talk to me and reminisce about, when him and I were dating and what it might have been like, because he felt a strong connection. And, I'm asking him, are you talking to your wife about this? And he's like, well, before we got married, we talked about everything we wanted to try and everything we wanted to do. And now we're married and nothing ever happens. We never try anything. We never do anything. He was so miserable in their sex life. So miserable in their sex life. So I know he was not the only person feeling like that, because so many people rushed into marriage, into a relationship, and then they feel this pressure of, well, this is eternal, we got sealed in the temple, we're forever, we promised to each other. So it's kind of like they're locked in and they have this pressure to stay together, even though they might not even be that compatible. They judged each other off of all the boxes they checked, but didn't really know if they clicked, if they got along, if their strengths and their weaknesses went together, if they clashed. So it was very toxic watching some of these couples, and quite a few of them did end up ending in divorce. And then these young people were marked as, tainted, unworthy, as already have been married. They couldn't do it because they didn't have enough faith. So, Mormon dating, interesting, weird, toxic, definitely toxic. And if you look at the other group of young people who were, doing the normal dating thing, they were kind of going wild because their whole life they had been restricted from this thing. So it's like if you make something restricted or you say, oh, this is out of bounds, this is off limits, it kind of makes it more appealing and more tempting to experience it. And that's what happened with a lot of the young people that I was around in Utah, the whole dark side of it all. So it just goes to show you that as much as they feel like they're doing something good for their young people by encouraging them to get married young and quickly and to stay out of temptation, they're also doing them an injustice because they're making it restricted, and it's like they want to get to it more, so then they get to it and they go wild. I mean, to think that it doesn't count if you use a condom. What kind of wild stuff is that? I mean, really, that's like some crazy roundabout logic to help yourself cope with the fact that you're completely going against what you were taught your whole entire life. I'm sure so many of them fought guilt inside of feeling unworthy. Probably felt like they were in so deep that it didn't matter. Didn't matter now. I just keep going. I'm already in deep. So it pushed a lot of them somewhere where they didn't even need to be pushed, because if the church was open and didn't restrict it so much and make it seem like it was such a bad thing, like it's such a taboo, sex is such a taboo thing, then maybe they would have more younger people who are actually happy being married, who experience real loving marriages instead of just we have to do all of these things every day because this is what good church members do, this is what good married couples do, this is what we have to do, and if we don't, we're not worthy, we're going to be judged. And for so many years I used these standards as well. I was very judgmental about dating, and even though I was a convert and I didn't check some of these boxes. I was faithful, but I hadn't served a mission and I didn't know scriptures that well. I had experienced stuff already, so I was not a virgin. Um, I was holding people up or holding guys up to this higher standard, even though I didn't even reach it myself. So it definitely makes you feel pressure. So you're more judgmental. It's just toxic all around. So I'm glad that I have decided not to be a Mormon anymore, because I could not imagine trying to date now as a single mother with a 6-year-old. No. Convert, no mission. Yeah, no. I would not have many choices. Which I'm not complaining about. I don't want those choices. Okay, everyone. Well, that's the end of this video. I enjoyed it because it was quite entertaining to me, and I've never talked about any of this stuff with anybody, so it helps me to get it off my chest and to get it out there, because I'm sure there's other people that have experienced too and can relate to me, can relate to what I'm saying. So just know that if you were in that dating scene and it made you feel unworthy, you're not unworthy. You are worth it. You're worthy. You are loved unconditionally. And no matter what, it doesn't matter what anybody says, you are always enough. All right. Bye, everyone. Mwah.